Future-Proof is sponsored by Concordia Dental Healthcare, expert care you can trust.
Hello and welcome to Future-Proof. You're watching Sarah Hopwood as I continue these business television programmes looking at empowering business owners, employees and indeed students to think positively ahead about their future. If you've been following the series, I'm on series 2 now, and I've been sharing a lot of information around the power of emotional intelligence and what it is, but I also have guests that come into the studio to talk about their view on the future and maybe what emotional intelligence means to them, but more than anything, nuggets of inspiration that you and I can be inspired by. So today I have someone I've worked with and known for many years, Paul Beckett, who runs a business called Florum with his business partner Richard. So I hope that you enjoyed the programme. Paul, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me along.
It's fantastic. So you and I have known each other a long time. Can you remember when we first met? 'Cause I think it not through my husband Paul. Oh, no, I met you guys first.
I think you did, yeah. At some networking event, probably.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe the Gatwick Diamond or
Something
like that. Yeah.
But it's well over 10 years ago.
Oh, easily, yeah.
And it's literally only as I'm talking to you now, because usually Paul and I will sort of meet different people and bring them into the business, and very often actually clients end up being mine that have originally come in through Paul. But I think on this occasion, you were one of you. I brought you into the business, and then Paul, I think, still works with you.
Yes, yeah, you see Paul every month.
Yeah, for a long time.
It has, yeah. Yeah, he was saying the other day that it was meeting number 600 and something, something like that. It was a huge number anyway.
Yeah. He sits on your board, I think, doesn't he? Is he chair?
Well, he's I mean, I guess he's
non-exec.
Yeah, he's kind of that role, yeah. No, not formally, I suppose, but that's basically what he is.
So we know Florum is a great business.
Of course.
Yeah, we've been. I love what you do, but for the purposes of people watching, can you tell me again who are Florum and what do you do?
Well, essentially, we are an environmental consultancy. That means that we primarily do things called environmental impact assessments for developments from very large, nationally significant infrastructure projects to small housing schemes. So we look at things like ecological impacts, air quality impacts, noise impacts, contaminated land, and that's all part of the planning process. But we also have developed, and in fact our unique selling point that got the business established in the first place was our provision of consultancy and contractor services for managing and dealing with Japanese knotweed.
I remember that.
And that has evolved very interestingly over the length of time we've been running at Florum, which is since 2003.
Yeah, so there's two things going on here. So I remember the Japanese knotweed, and for those that don't know what that is, they might have heard it but they're not quite sure what it is. It's not really just a weed, is it? Well, it probably is, but I mean by definition. But why is it? Is it still so destructive?
I guess originally, and how we were able to start a business dealing with Japanese knotweed was the concern that it was causing damage to built structures. In reality, it doesn't cause more damage than things like tree roots or even other invasive plants that can damage buildings such as ivy or buddleia, but it has evolved into a blighting issue. So people don't want to buy property that has knotweed, and that essentially has just ballooned the issue into a huge risk that banks and other people financing development need to have covered. Yes. So really that's where.
So how do you manage it, bearing in mind you run an environmental, and I want to hear more about that in the wider scheme of things, but if we just stick to knotweed for a moment, how do you deal with something that is so prevalent, or grows quite quickly or what have you, in an environmentally friendly way? Was that possible? Is that possible?
Well, it's something we're actually working on with a number of universities. We've been doing some research, first with Sussex University, then with Liverpool University, and we've currently got some research ongoing with Lancaster University, trying to find carbon-friendly ways to deal with Japanese knotweed, because at the moment you've got two options. You use herbicides, which are expensive to use and take a lot of energy to produce, and they're not particularly environmentally friendly. And then the other option is to dig out the knotweed, which has a very deep root system.
Yes.
So you end up moving a lot of contaminated soil, and that's excavators, tipper trucks, and then landfill. So those are all not very environmentally friendly things. So we're looking at how the biochemistry of the plant could possibly be manipulated in other ways, so that we don't have to use nasty chemicals or have to ship it halfway across the country to put it in a hole in the ground.
Yeah. You're very understated, Paul, and Paul's humility is tangible because they do run a very, very successful business, and you've worked with some very, very, and probably still are working with some very, very big fish. When I was working with you, I was working with your staff. Have your numbers of staff increased over the years? Or?
Yes. I mean, there must be about 20 of us now.
Oh, that is more than I was working with. So
yeah,
you have expanded.
And we tend to expand in the summer because we do a lot of ecological surveys, and we require, as a lot of consultancies do, seasonal ecologists to do a lot of the survey work. We just don't have the work for them in the winter when the animals aren't there and the plants aren't obvious. So our ranks swell to beyond that in the summer. So I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, because it varies.
We actually have, but it's.
So if there's somebody watching now, and we know, the environment is a large part of people's conversations, particularly, recently, and I just think it's going to increase. What about, somebody in school or in university, college watching now, just thinking, I want to be part of this front line doing something about our planet. How could you advise them to, if they were looking and wanting to, let's say, join you in 5-10 years time? Where would you signpost them? How would you advise them to develop their learning?
Well, to be honest, I think, the future lies obviously with young people who are at school and university now. There is change afoot, thank heavens. The last recession at the end of the noughties really put the kibosh on a lot of good, innovative environmental work that was going on in this country and others at that time. The stimulus was to improve the economy, get the money flowing, and that meant that the environment went to the bottom of the pile. So now, finally, we're catching up with where we were 10 years ago, and you can see that there is a social movement developing with regard to environmental concerns, climate change, that sort of thing. And that means that every job really has an impact and has to consider and take account of its impact on the environment. And it's our young people who actually see things like a windmill, a turbine generating electricity on a hill as a beautiful thing. And it's the older generation, perhaps the Brexit generation, the right-wing generation that are making some questionable choices at the moment. They're the ones that see that as an aberration. So really, I think my advice to young people is carry on.
Carry on really, doing what you're doing.
Yeah, understand that the future belongs to you, and you need to force this change upon people who aren't accepting it so much. So I don't think you have to go into an environmental job. Every job is going to be environmental.
Thank you, Paul. Do stay with me as we go into the break. We're going to be talking more about emotional intelligence and indeed the presence of artificial intelligence in your world, maybe now and moving forward. So let's come back in a moment. Thank you. EQ, emotional quotient, is better known as emotional intelligence. It is a tangible tool that can sit alongside your services or your product, and it can be taught. Leaders with high EQ have less stress, they're more effective, and they earn more money. There's a great saying, just because we have pains, it does not give us permission to be a pain. I believe that teaching emotional intelligence has a direct impact on your sense of success and your net profits. EQ will empower you and your workforce to drive the change that you want. Change brings transition. EQ can help unpack what's holding you back and speed up that period of transition.